Hey, it's John and Mike, brew-shoots.com, and look at this. This is like a pub ale. Like a nice, brownish amber pub ale right here in front of me. Mike, is this a wee heavy?
No.
No?
This is a Scottish heavy.
A Scottish heavy.
Wee heavy is something else.
That's something different.
According to BJCP. So my family and I, we not too long ago took a trip to Scotland, sampled some beers, really enjoyed it.
Nice.
And when I got back, I thought, you know what, I haven't really brewed anything in that Scottish ale category in a long time. One thing I love about like pub style ales like that, especially cask beer, is the drinkability of low carbonation. But the balance it takes to actually brew a beer that's got the flavor profile you want, despite you're not going to have carbonation to lift it and all that other stuff. Anyway, I didn't really formulate this based off of anything I experienced over there, but I just wanted to sort of play with this. I love these English style, UK style, low gravity beers. Find them super flavorful, and I just realized I hadn't been brewing them in a long time. So coming back from Scotland, I thought, let me do this. So this is a Scottish heavy. You got Scottish light, Scottish heavy, and I think the next one is like Scottish export.
Yeah.
Now this used to be the nomenclature of like 60, 70, 80 shilling.
Okay.
I guess that was never really a thing. The BJCP just sort of made it a thing or assumed it was a thing when they first wrote these things up.
How about that?
But anyway, this is Scottish heavy, but again, it's sort of a misnomer because the gravity range on one of these, according to BJCP, is generally about 1035 to 1040. So it's not really heavy. It's just that it's compared to a Scottish light, which would be like 35 or less.
Jeez.
So like real session ales. I mean, that's the point, right? So there should be a lot of bready, malty, biscuit character, a little bit of caramel character. I did brew this. So anyway, let me just give you the recipe.
Let's talk about the recipe.
Yeah. So so this is it's about 72% Maris Otter to really drive that English flavor. It's about 13% Crystal 80.
Okay.
It's about 13% flaked corn. And the reason for that is because actually I was doing some reading on Scottish brewing, and that historically they would use a fair amount of adjunct, mainly because adjuncts weren't taxed the way malt was. So there's same thing with dry Irish stout.
Yeah.
Unmalted barley was not taxed. So that's why there is flaked barley in Irish stout to screw the man, to try to limit the tax liability on the beer.
Makes sense.
So, but they would typically use some flaked corn. So I threw a little flaked corn in there, 13%, which is actually a decent amount. And then just a little bit, it's a 1.7% of roasted barley, just for that color adjustment. I used half an ounce, I used half an ounce of Target hops.
Target.
At 60 minutes. That's all, just to give you a little bit of balancing. So the estimated IBUs on this is only 17.
Yeah.
The color on this happens to be 17 too. I mashed this at 154 for 45 minutes, and then ramped to mash out, let it go for 30 minutes because I used the Brewzilla and I don't really have to pay attention to it. So once I set it for mash out, maybe I come back in 10 minutes, maybe I come back in 30 minutes. What does it matter, right? This is actually mostly tap water because I wanted a lot of that sodium chloride for the body, the mouthfeel of it. But I hit it with some Camden to clean that up, and added just a little bit of like half a teaspoon of gypsum to give me a little bit of sulfate character to try to support the beer. So my starting gravity was a little bit out of range, it was 1042.
Oh, geez.
But with the higher mash temp and the serious amount of C Crystal 80 in there, it finished at about 1015. So it's pushing like maybe 4% ABV. So it's truly a great session ale. Oh, and by the way, and I did ferment this with YE 1728 Scottish ale yeast.
Oh, that's
so I went out and got
nice.
that yeast to be authentic. So historically speaking, there used to be a lot of confusion in this style about peat or smoky flavors, but that's not supposed to be in there at all. And I don't think it is in this. So
no, I'm not picking up any peat.
So there you go. So I'm going to take another sip of this. Now this was, it's a little lighter in carbonation than I want it to be, but I was going for a lower level of carbonation. But we'll see. You tell me.
Yeah, I mean it's drinking like a gravity pulled, pub ale. Well, certainly on the color you've got, it's almost like a tea amber color.
Yeah,
for sure. I love it. Looks great. In like an autumn beer, that's exactly what I'd like to see in a Scottish one too.
Mm-hmm.
That Crystal 80 is coming through pretty strongly, I think.
Yep.
You know, you got some, you know, kind of those deeper caramel notes.
Yep,
you know,
yep,
not
yep.
the lighter ones. And that kind of it pulls through in the flavor too. It's so easy drinking. So easy drinking. A little bit because of the light carbonation, but
Yep.
mostly because it's just fermented clean. You got so much malty goodness in there. The Maris Otter is definitely a nice foundation. You know, the target is a hint.
Yeah.
It's like a rumor of hops in this
Something
beer.
in the background there, yeah. Yep.
Not much there. But for this kind of style and being in the British Isles and having like a true cask ale, I mean that's what they. This is actually a little too cold,
Yeah, it is too cold. It absolutely is too cold.
But this is what you'd get. The ones that I've experienced over there. So
I wanted to actually put it in the keg, a serving keg, just to let it drop a little more brighter. And then I was going to use the beer gun, uncarbonated, and just bottle it with some carbonation drops and seal it for like a bottle conditioned.
Sure.
I just sort of feel like, I've said this in the past too, but certainly for these styles of beer, I just think like bottle conditioned ales that re-ferment in this category of the British ales, there's just something right about it, and it just works. But for this, we just left it in the keg and carbonated this way. So if I had a cask set up, I would definitely love to throw this into that format.
I mean, like I said, it's an easy drinking beer. You could have certainly a session of these and feel just fine.
Yep, and I don't get any of that early raisiny character that I'm sometimes afraid of C80. I mean, 120 type of, you really start to get that more burnt sugar and the raisin, but this is just barely like right before the line there. It actually worked really well.
I think so too. Yeah. Looking at back in the good old days when they were the shillings, I remember seeing that they'd have sort of those higher Lovibond caramel malts in them, or crystal malts in the recipes, and I was always intrigued by that. Like, what would that be? I don't think I might have brewed one, maybe like a 70, whatever that was. That's probably the heavy. Something like that, and I'd like the way that came out. So.
Yeah. The funny thing is, when I was researching the recipes and when I came up with this recipe, and I really looked at it, and now having it in the glass, when I was tasting samples of it at post-fermentation stuff, I really began to think to myself, is this like, in a way, is this the birthplace of Kentucky Common?
Maybe.
With the flaked corn, the higher crystal, and the color adjustment, it's very, very close to that. Very, just maybe the hops are different.
Sure.
But I think like pre-prohibition, most of those beers are made with cluster hops, which is, I think there's some lineage familiarity with some of the UK varieties there. So I don't know. So it's almost like this very well could be, historically speaking, sort of the start of that concept of having a higher flaked corn, caramel colored light ale. Yeah. Right?
Thinking back to that Kentucky Common you made, I mean, the color is very similar.
Yeah.
So,
It also is very similar to being like a dark mild or something like that, right? Maybe without the corn and a little bit more biscuit punch for like a dark mild, but otherwise, all these things sort of live in the same vein, and I love the whole spectrum of those beers. So more to come.
And then tell me more about the Scottish ale yeast. Is that just the one?
So it's supposed to be so all those like UK-ish yeasts are supposed to be a little estery, a little bit more, they give you something in the fermentation flavor-wise, as opposed to being super clean or being something else. So this is in that vein. I think there's definitely some of that caramel character, the way it plays with the caramel malt and the Maris Otter. There is a bit of a ester, very light, happy, fruity note to it. In a slightly larger beer like an ESB or something, I think that's one of the things that along with like East Kent Golding, sort of supports the concept of like some of those marmalade-like flavors
Sure.
from the English yeast strains.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time since I've used Scottish ale yeast, and actually, it's supposed to be a really clean fermenting yeast with just a touch of that estery quality.
Yeah, it's funny. It's also one that can handle, at least one of the Scottish strains can handle high alcohol levels. Because I know that it was something that was suggested for meads.
Oh,
Or,
really?
yeah. Or braggots, like the hybrid beer
Yeah.
mead. beverage.
Brewing a beer like this and then just pitching onto this cake like your imperial stout or a true wee heavy or something like that. You sort of using a beer like this to start your yeast and have a big yeast, and then you'd have plenty of yeast for using this yeast in like a Baltic porter or something like that would be excellent too, right?
Right on. Cool. Well, that is Mike's Scottish Heavy for this edition of the Brew Dudes video, channel. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you have experience brewing these kinds of beers, let us know. We certainly love seeing the comments and learning more from you. For John and Mike, brew-dudes.com, brew on.
Cheers.